What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Roots and Streams podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Yamas. Today we're doing something very different. A lot of firsts today. Um, you'll notice probably that it is not just me, but not just me in a way different way. This is the first time I'm doing video conferencing. So this is via Skype with a guest, very special guest, someone I've known for a long time. And actually, um, for me, definitely in a special place because he has an exclusive membership that he was a part of my pop-up dinners. He actually came. I think there's probably only like 50 people total, maybe less, that ever showed up to my dinners and had the experience of like me cooking courses of like Mexican dishes. And people told me it was good, but it may not ever
They
happen
were
again.
they were so good. I mean, I mentioned it to my wife last night, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that was the guy that did the Hika Michelle tacos with the tinga chicken."
Yeah.
She's still like she loves them. So yeah, they were awesome.
So, without further ado, Jonathan Madrigal of Madrigal Made, just so many things. We went to high school together, handyman, I know, man of faith, multiple children just like me. So he's busy. And he just, I really appreciate him for one, reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm up for being on the podcast." He's never done this before. So just kudos to you, dude, for just even having the courage to join me, and also was one of the people that I really appreciate because, like, hey, where are you at? It's been 2 weeks. It's been three. It's been 3 weeks. You said 2 weeks, and like send me emojis of like a watch, and I'm like, yes, this is what I need. We all need accountability, right? I think you need a little bit of it, not to the point where like you're getting judged, but I don't know. I appreciate it. So without further ado, Jonathan Madrigal. Woo,
Hi.
yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on. Like I said, I this is the first for me, but it's really exciting, and um, I've found your podcast to be very encouraging. Just as a father and a husband, and just um, listening through your challenges that you've had, and just it's all very relatable. Just I guess it's like, um, hey, I'm not the only one that's struggling in these areas or having these difficult conversations with my wife, and it's cool. I mean, obviously there's other people doing it, but it it's fun to hear those stories and listen to somebody else going through the same stuff. So just I'm thankful that you're doing this, and it's a cool thing.
Oh man, it's my privilege. I mean, the fact that you even say those things, it's helpful to know. Like I mentioned last one, like that's kind of been like the burden on my heart, right? That I don't hear enough of these. Like you said, I know there's podcasts. Maybe I'm just not searching for the right ones, and there's some that I'm tuned into that say similar things. So just for you to say that is really motivating and just kind of keeps me going, keeps me hitting record, um, every week. So I appreciate it. Kind of like how we mentioned before, if you can just give people listening a little bit of your background. Again, you could start as far as back, like from the womb or wherever like you think is a good starting point, and give us as little as much as you want to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the city of San Fernando, California. Um, my parents growing up were both believers, and they kept us in the church, and um, I I accepted Christ as my savior kind of early on. It was like a summer camp. I think I was about 8 years old, 9 years old. I can't remember exactly, but it was around that time. um, and I'm always so encouraged when I hear people tell me the exact date. I'm like, man, I wish I knew the exact date. I don't, but I know it was
Me
around that
too.
time. But
Yeah.
it it just I've always been in the church and kind of had that relationship. And then there was some like church scandal when I was about like 14 or 15. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like just getting started into high school. And then the church kind of broke up. The pastor left. I mean, it was like this whole deal. I don't even remember all the details. And then I kind of just like fell out of touch with the church after that, especially going into high school, which, like looking back, like I wish that was like the worst timing for it to happen,
Mm,
because, I think like you're coming into your own and at that age, and you're so easily influenced by outside influences, especially in high school. So it was like a bummer that that's where I went, and I started just kind of leaving my faith, I guess you could say, and just kind of living for myself and not so much trying to be um, the light, just doing my own thing. And I don't think I like got into any real big trouble or anything, but it was still one of those things that like I look back on, I'm like, man, like my life would have been so much different if I would have just
Mhm.
stayed in the church. But here we are, and it's all part of God's plan, and I'm thankful for all the little things that have been along the way, especially like getting after high school, I moved to Hawaii, to the big island of Hawaii.
That's
And
right. I do remember hearing about that. Oh.
yeah, um, I moved to Hawaii and started a career in event production. And I was there for like almost 5 years. And even when I had moved back officially, I was still going back and forth because there was still like just jobs that would come up and they were offering to pay for my flight. And I had friends that lived out there. So I was like, sure, I'll go back to Hawaii. Why not? So I was out there back and forth for about another year. And then, um, like during that time when I was in Hawaii, I think that's probably when I got the furthest away from
Mm.
Christ and my faith. I just, I turned 21 when I was out there. So then I was like drinking and partying, and I made good money, which was awesome, at that age. Like,
Dangerous.
yeah, it was dangerous because, like it was, I was smoking a lot of weed back then and just drinking and having a good time and hanging out at the beach like a bum. And I mean, it is, it was a lot of fun. I don't have
Right.
any like actual regrets about my life, but
Mhm.
those are things that I'm not necessarily proud of. So, um, but it was a fun experience, that's for sure. And I learned
Right.
like a valuable skill, like doing event production, and just learned how to do audio and video and set up lighting and like projectors and stages and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was kind of wild just learning a whole new skill set, and then being able to take that when I moved back to California. It was like 2009. I'd moved back to California, and it was kind of like after the big like housing slump or whatever. It just like events were not as big of a deal. Nobody was coming to
Mm.
Hawaii as
It was
much. I
like
mean, like bigger
2008.
companies. Yeah, 2008 was when it started to hit, and then I moved back in 2009. Um, yeah, and then I met a couple of other people while I was back in California and started, just keeping with the events. And it was great because I had a skill. It's like a lot of people went to college, university, and got a degree in something, and I just got firsthand experience doing event production. And um, like I always tell people, like moving to Hawaii was kind of like me going to college because it was, like 4 or 5 years away from home, and came back and learned something that I
For
was able
you.
to, yeah,
For
for
you.
me, right? And I was
How
getting paid to
miserable.
do it. Yeah.
Sounds
So it
miserable.
was, it had its moments. It was lonely, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I missed my family, and I mean, I had family out there, but not like that. It wasn't the same. So, um, yeah. And, moved back, started doing more event production. I ended up meeting a company that was producing um, walks for Susan G. Komen, the breast cancer
Mm.
uh, foundation, and they had an event that was a 3-day walk, but it was a 60-mile 3-day walk. The participants would walk 20 miles on a Friday, 20 miles on Saturday, and 20 miles on Sunday.
Whoa.
It was a crazy walk, but they were doing this in 14 different cities across the country. And like as being part of the staff, we had 4 tour buses. It was like 13 trucks, and I just traveled around on a tour bus, lived on a tour bus for essentially like 3 years because I was doing the same event for 3 years. I mean, the event series ran from like May till November, and so during that time, it was living on a tour bus. Just it was wild. Like it was
You're a
so much
rock
fun.
star. Yeah.
You could say so. We used to have a joke, like people would see us rolling into the hotel, and they're like, "Oh, what band are you with?" And we always would just call it "Creepy Midnight Uncle." It was weird. weird. I don't even know who came up with it, but it was just like that was always our band name. Oh, it was Creepy Midnight Uncle. Oh yeah, I think I've heard of them. We're like, yeah, you sure have.
That's so
But
funny that people would say, I've heard of them, just to try
yeah,
to be like, yeah, I know you guys are cool.
yeah, we're so cool. But it was really we're just producing a breast cancer walk, but it was a lot of fun, and um, yeah, I just kept with the event work, and then then I started doing a different event series. It was a mud run. I was a production manager for a 5K obstacle course race through the mud, and we did that in like 9 different cities across the country. We didn't tour around in a tour bus. We just flew in and out for those events, but it was a lot of travel and um, kind of around like after I'd finished that event series was like in 2013, and then I
Hmm.
got another. One of the guys that I met in Hawaii, he had a production company in San Diego, and so then he was like, "Hey, I need somebody to run the production department of our company. Do you want to move to San Diego and do that?" So I moved to San Diego and started working for him. I did that for 2 years and realized I don't like being in San Diego and would rather be back in LA. So I moved back to LA, and like while I was in San Diego, it's when I met my wife actually on Match.com, which was kind of a wild thing. But
So there
um,
was purpose there.
yeah, it although she was up in LA, and even like crazier is that she grew up in Sylmar,
Oh, wow.
and I don't know if you know Sybil, the
Yeah.
baseball part.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Softball. Uh-huh.
yeah. So she her and her brothers, they would play at Sybil. I played at Sybil, and her brothers and I are the same age, and we probably played on the same teams against each other, never
Yeah.
met. We were talking about like I don't know if you remember like the Alpha Beta on Glen Oaks in Sylmar. It was a grocery store, and she had
Mm.
talked about it. So I was like, oh yeah, we used to go shopping at this grocery store. And I'm like, we went shopping at that same grocery store. And then she told me about a trip that she had done to Hawaii with her family that her
Oh, wow.
grandfather had done, and they went
She's
to this
chasing
luau
you.
show. It's like there was so many times where our paths had probably crossed and we never met. Like
Mm.
during that luau show, I would have been running the sound for that luau show that they went to. Like, oh, that exact show, yeah, I would have been that. That would have been one of my days. That's crazy that you were there. And then just like all these times that we've never met or our paths never crossed, and then eventually, just like, oh, on Match.com, we're matched together, and like, oh, hey, what's up? How's it going? And next thing you know, we're like dating, and yeah.
That's
But
crazy.
she kind of brought me back to to Christ, kind of brought me
Oh,
back to
the good old
my
wives.
faith. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just they're it's kind of wild, but it just how that ended up happening, and we were like dating and trying to find a place to go to church, and um, we drove by this church after hanging out at one of our friends' houses, and we saw this little church in Newhall, and we're like, oh, hey, that's a cool little church. Let's go check it out. And we did, and we were there ever since. Like we never left. We got married at that church. We were raising our family at that church, and up until this past June, we were still at that church. So
So
yeah,
where are you recording from?
I am recording from Bowling Green, Kentucky now. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
we
you're
moved
probably
out
gonna be
here.
one of the you'll be one of the furthest, probably for sure, recordings that'll be
Yeah,
on the podcast for sure.
yeah, yeah. We moved out here. We made the decision to move out here last December. We found out that we were going to have our fourth kid, and that kind of came as a surprise. Um,
Mm.
and we were in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and in Santa Clarita, and we loved it. It was great. We had great neighbors and a great little community there, but we needed more rooms. Definitely needed another bathroom. And it was like, all right, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna find another place, or what? And we were also like, we were starting to homeschool. My oldest, he's only 6, but he was doing kindergarten, and she was homeschooling him through kindergarten. But she was also still working. She does hair. Um, but yeah, it just like kind of, I don't even know where was I? Oh yeah, so we needed a new place to live, and we decided to move out here. Her mom lives out here. She has one brother that lives up in Louisville, and then another brother that lives in Nashville, which is like 2 hours one way, an hour the other way. So the mom
You
lives
guys,
in Bowling Green.
you guys the first ones there though? Or did you guys like did people follow, or did you move there
Oh
after?
no, we're the last ones here.
Oh, okay, okay. So okay, so
Yeah,
you
they
had
were
some
already out
incentive.
here. Yeah, they were already
Okay.
out here. So when we were considering, you know, we'd been considering moving out of state for several years, but never considered Kentucky.
Hmm.
We were considering Arizona at one point. We were considering Austin, Texas. Um, but somehow, it just came up in our conversation, and that night I remember was it wasn't necessarily a conversation. It was an argument. It was
Oh
like a
wow.
fight,
Oh
and
wow.
just talking about like, hey, we need to find another place, and it wasn't the greatest conversation, that's for sure. But I think I ended up just like sleeping on the couch because I was just like so annoyed that night.
Well,
And
not in the desert.
yeah, but I ended up just like I woke up and started doing some research. I think I woke up like super early. It was like 3 in the morning.
Wait, hang on.
And
So let's slow down for a second. So and you, I know you don't have to give me like the nuts and bolts of it, but were you guys like arguing because like you knew you guys knew you needed a big place, or you were already talking about Kentucky, or like somebody wanted to move out of LA? Not trying to place
yeah,
blame on anyone, but just kind of wondering like what was the disagreement? Like yeah.
well, the disagreement was that we weren't going to be able to afford living in LA
Uh-huh.
and essentially retiring her from doing hair so that she can homeschool our
I
oldest
see.
and the other kids as they started to grow. And it was like, well, I'm not making enough money to live on one income, especially
Uh-huh.
out here like that. Like we gotta, if we're gonna do that, we need to move. And she was like, well, then why don't we move? And it's just like, well, because where are we gonna go?
Hmm.
I don't, and it's not like that's an easy thing to do. It's not like I have a ton of cash that I can just like go in and move, and then I'm abandoning all my local business. So like you touched on it earlier. So I do woodworking as a profession,
Hmm.
and that kind of like that's its own story. But that started during COVID. As a profession, I was always doing it as a hobby. My dad did woodworking and carving and painting. He's really artsy, and so I kind of learned a lot of that from him. But um, I was doing it just as a hobby. And then during COVID, when I had lost my job from doing events because events were all shut down.
Hmm.
So then I got laid off, and then she was doing hair, and then she essentially got laid off because all the salons had closed. We didn't really have any way of making any money, and so I started doing woodwork just as like just small stuff on the side, little pieces here and there, and then it just kind of turned into like a full on business. Like people just kept asking me to make stuff, and I just kept making it. And I started the Instagram account, and like that was getting shared, and did a couple of like boutiques, and met lots of other local businesses that I was making signage for, and they were promoting it. So I mean, it just developed into its own thing, and it was really cool. Like it's I'm so blessed that I get to do something that was a hobby now as a profession. I mean, I wish it was as busy as it was. Moving to Kentucky, I've lost a lot of my local business, and
Hmm.
like you already know, but I have an Etsy shop where I make um, and sell drawer organizers through like, and that started just through just like, one of our friends was a home organizer, and she asked if I could make her a set, and she had a large Instagram following. I was like kind of apprehensive because I didn't really want to make one and then become like, oh, now I'm going to be the guy who only makes bag boxes. Because I think she at the time she had like 25,000 followers, which isn't like a whole lot, but that's a lot.
No, yeah,
Like
it's a lot for
it's
sure.
like
That is a lot.
1%, even a 0.5% of her followers decided to order, I was in trouble. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what happened. Like she posted it, and the orders just came in. It was like crazy. Like I had four guys working out of my garage trying to keep up with orders. We literally could not make them fast enough. I was spending thousands of dollars a week on material, on the
Mm.
guys, buying more tools. Like I had two CNC machines running at one point, and one guy just full time running and operating both CNC machines. Like it was overwhelming. Like
Mm.
I loved it, but it was just like, this is why I didn't want to make that first one. Like now I can't do anything fun. I only make these boxes. But it was
But
cool.
it
I mean,
but it
I'm
paid the
certainly
bills.
thankful. It paid the bills, yeah, and it paid
Yeah.
other people's bills. Like those same guys, like they were having a hard time finding work at the time
Mm.
because this was in 21, so it was like they were still reeling from COVID and trying to get themselves reestablished. So like I'm thankful that that showed up, and it was just like always one of those times where it's like it helped me to remember like, yeah, God's got a plan,
For
and
sure.
here I was, this not wanting to take on this project, but it turned into this monster. And at the same time, like I had guys, like I was paying them $25 an hour to work in
Oh,
my
nice.
shop and make these
That was in
boxes with me.
2021. Now
Yeah.
I think like I don't know. That sounds like minimum wage now. I don't. It's not.
Yeah.
It's so around
It's
there. It's
no,
really high.
it's I mean, it's still higher than minimum wage. I think what minimum wage is like $20. So
Yeah.
25 is not bad. And to be working in a garage, and I mean, like I shouldn't say this, but it was like all under the table too. I was paying them
Yeah.
essentially cash. So that worked out well for them and their families because they weren't, stressing about where their next meal was coming from. So and that lasted like a solid year where we were just making boxes. And but yeah, then fast forward, the partnership with that person ended. The sales started to slow down. I had to start a whole new Etsy store, and um, I'm still doing it. The sales aren't as much. It's funny, like just right as we started this call, I got a notification that I got a sale, so that's cool. It's like
Nice.
$175 came in, and I'm like, all right, sweet, nice. Just
Sweet.
sitting here taking a podcast call, so that's always fun.
I'm curious. So one, I think it is so awesome, and I'm kind of envious. I haven't shared this with you that you doing woodwork like as a hobby. A couple people know, a couple close friends know that I've like dabbled in woodwork. I've made a couple of things. I've probably maybe every guy has. I don't know. Like
Oh
got
yeah,
bored enough. And I bought like a table saw. I mean, I bought like definitely too many tools. But I've made like this desk that's computers on right now. I've made like my wife's desk, other people's desks. None of it is like very good. It's like okay, it won't fall. But I definitely dabbled in. I'm like, I wonder if I can like make a living out doing it. And obviously I'm not good enough where or not doing it fast enough or anything like that. But it was like I remember thinking that. And so for you to like be able to do it, I kind of know a little bit like there's some satisfaction, to like working on something like that, to have that finished product. And for as professional as you do it, so if, like anyone follow his Instagram Madrigal Made, or how they find Jonathan Madrigal. It's just so
yeah,
satisfying to see like and so I don't know too much about the tools you're using. I think it's a CNC, like I don't know, whatever cuts out like those Lego pieces for you to put things together. I don't
yeah, yeah. It
to put
is.
together stuff. It's
It's very
super
satisfying.
satisfying. Yeah. And super professional what you're doing. I'm wondering, would you like say a customer or myself were to be like, hey, like, what do you think of making this? Like, I need maybe it's something along the lines of like organization or something. Like, I know you do custom things, but what if it was like a whole new product? Um, I don't know that you haven't made. Like, you always up for those kinds of things, or
Yeah, yeah. Like I mentioned, like the bag organizers, that's its own monster. Like it. Um, the company is Madrigal Made, which is my last name, and then I kind of made a division of it. It's called Made for Organizing, and that's just the home organization stuff. And I only sell that through Etsy unless somebody like asks me for it locally, then I'll sell them locally. But the Madrigal Made, I'll do pretty much anything. It's
mm,
like I think my at my Instagram bio it says something like signage and gifts or what else I don't even remember, but event props, anything. I've had people come up and ask me to do anything from like speaker boxes for their cars to um, shelving to display stuff at a boutique. and signage. I've done lots of signage. I also do, like, I just recently finished up a like replica London phone booth. And
I saw that. That thing,
it,
yeah, it's like a
yeah, that came
Superman
out
booth.
really good.
Hmm.
That was a fun project, and that was like a challenging project. But yeah. I mean, if somebody has some sort of idea, I'm always up for it. I don't do anything unless it's commissioned. Like, that's
Hmm.
with the exception of the bag boxes. Like, I don't keep like an inventory or a stock of little items that I'll just make. Somebody has to ask me, "Hey, can you make this?" And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, how do you want it made? What do you want it made out of? I like to take somebody else's vision and create it for them. And it's like
Hmm.
a lot a lot of my customers are women, and they come to me with like something that they found on Pinterest, and they're like, "Hey, I've been wanting this and my husband can't make it. Can you make it?"
Dang it.
Sure. Yeah. So that's what
So
happens a
you're
lot.
getting all the business of all the husbands that can't make what they promised in their little wood shop. They got to send it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thankful for that. Like,
So yeah, for sure.
that's where I make most of my
Send it
money,
to a
is some other
professional.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
And
when you can't fix
it's
the toilet, then yeah, you've tried enough, honey. Thank you for the great try, solid try, but I'm gonna send it to a professional to get it done.
Yeah, it's funny that that's like the DIY, right? And I was thinking about this yesterday at during church. Our pastor gave us kind of like, it was just an interesting um uh oh, actually, this is actually my old pastor. I was listening to his sermon, now that I think about
Mm,
it, and he was talking about like the DIY. Everybody wants to do it yourself to save money or whatever. And the message was about like um works-based salvation, and like, we can't do it ourselves. Like, that's why we have a professional. That's why God sent in the professional for us, so that we don't have to do it ourselves. And I'm not trying to get
no,
too
you're good.
spiritual, but just when you said the DIY, it just like reminded me of his message. It was like, yeah, you're right. Like, we always want to try and do it ourselves, and we got it's just like humble reminder that we can't. Like,
For sure.
yeah, at a certain point, you kind of just gotta, like, the let go and let God, right? Jesus, take the wheel type of approach sometimes.
I think knowing, so I would encourage like homeowners or new homeowners, like if you're young and you're just got a home or whatever, or like, not if you're renting, it's totally different. But if you're owning a home, there's definitely things that you should learn, but at some point, yeah, like you gotta just call it professional. Like I know my limits, and they're actually further than most people are comfortable with. Like I would mess with electrical, like I ran new lines. And yeah, maybe I shouldn't say this because it's not like permitted, but I installed my electric car charger, and that was like a 6 gauge um new line that I had to run in. But no, for sure, there's certain things like where like I knew I couldn't do my like redo my bathroom and the shower because I'm like, it needs waterproofing. That's just too many YouTube videos. I know I
Yeah,
probably could YouTube video it. It's just time. Uh, yeah, I think you can do DIY almost anything, but if there's something to like, okay, is it going to be worth my time? Am I going to do it right? And yeah, there's definitely professionals out there that can do it. You don't have to worry about like the leaking or anything like that.
oh yeah,
And it's just a good move. But know a little bit, I think. At least try. 'Cause sometimes it's like, oh, did you check your breaker? And you call an electrician. It's like, oh, what's a breaker? Like, oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to touch anything in the bathroom, like, especially, mainly because if you do it yourself and you end up like doing something wrong and it's leaking into the wall for however long before you even know it. And then it's like, oh, your homeowner's insurance doesn't want to cover this now because you did it yourself and you didn't hire a professional. I'm like, no, thanks. You're on your own here. You were on your own the first time. You can be on your own again. I wouldn't want to deal with that.
Well, dude, that actually kind of triggers me a little bit because, okay, so the house we're living in, we bought it in 2010. We only had one daughter. Um, I think about this. So we had a son, our second son, like 3 years, our first son, 3 years later. So two kids. Um, and we're doing a lot of baths. Like the kids like playing in the water. So like one of our bathrooms, just constant baths. And all of a sudden we started noticing under our wood floor, like just like it was moist and the water's coming out. So I
Mm.
didn't do anything. So to like, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I didn't even know. And then we started like noticing it getting really bad. And so we call like a plumber and they're like inspecting things and checking things. They're like, oh, we think it's the bathtub and it's the drain. They end up having to like cut the wall open and see like the drain. I guess it was too much pressure, and the people who originally installed it, it wasn't like installed right to handle the pressure of the bathtub water coming out. Um, and I mean, I was still a fairly new homeowner, and I was just thought, okay, we'll just call people and get everyone out here, and like got fans blowing, and they're cutting out my walls like everywhere because of the water damage. Like floors are getting ripped out,
Oh
and
yeah.
then like my insurance is talking to the plumber, and and I mean I forgive him, but still I was a little upset, and I put him on the phone, and like the insurance um so just like I was scrambling, I just didn't know what to do. And I thought like just call the insurance and just kind of doing it, even to that extent, knowing what to do in an insurance claim on your own. I just thought, it was real easy. Um, and so I put the plumber on the phone and he's like, yeah, it looks like it's been going on for months. And so then they marked me like as negligent or like that I had just let it go.
Uh,
And him saying that it just ruined my whole claim. And they put it all on me that I just let it go forever. But we didn't realize it. We saw it and then we called it maybe like the next day. Like we just like thought it was weird and then like they inspected it. But he's like, no, yeah. I don't know why. He maybe just didn't know about insurance. I don't know why, but he said that. And so the claim guy that came out, like, yeah, they're like, no, we can't do it. So it cost us like $10,000.
oh man.
Yeah, because we had people come out. One, we had to pay the professional people that had all these fans and everything. It's like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
molding. I mean, they just went over the top. And now looking back, I just called, some super professional people and stuff. So they cut out all the walls, like half my wood floors are gone. So that was like 5,000. There was like 5,000 to get new floors. And I think my father-in-law helped me put in the walls and paint everything again because he does painting. Um, but yeah, it it just reminds me of that, of like even knowing like I think it was too late that there's people that even know how to go about um I forgot what they're called, but they're people who will handle like your claim for you and they'll like be your representative. And I just knew about it like too late. Um yeah, but that was definitely a credit card debt for a while.
Yeah.
Floors are nice now though. We redid them with nicer wood because it was laminate before. But we have pictures and videos from when the kids are young, and it's just like concrete, like half the house is concrete, and there's missing walls and stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it reminds me of that.
Oh,
It's you
I
talking about
can I
lakes.
can relate to that too. The concrete floors, like the year before we moved out of the house that we were in, we were renting that house. But I remember it was February 1st of 23, and the uh, the washer. And I'm thankful that the washer was provided by the landlord.
Uh-huh.
We had our own dryer, but they had a washer, and we moved in. And we're like, well, we'll just keep the washer. It still works, whatever. And she was like, if it breaks, I won't replace it. Well, it broke, but it flooded the house,
Oh no.
and it was so bad. Like the water went like basically right to the center of the house, and and we were not home. Like it just happened, and then I came down and I'm like seeing water in my shop because it had like the washroom was near the garage. So I roll up the door and I'm walking in. I'm like, why is there water all in my shop? This is weird. And then I see that it's coming from, like the washroom door, which is like the way to get into the garage. And I go over there and I'm like, oh no, carpet's flooded, the walls were soaked, and for like it took like 3 months. But yeah, Servpro came out and had holes in the wall, and like the 2 feet up all around the house was just like
Yeah.
open, and it was just like that. And then of course the landlord was, I mean, I don't want to say being cheap, but was being very frugal about
Yeah.
who she hired to fix it, and that
Oh, the
took
frugalness.
forever. And yeah, like it was wild. But yeah, we have pictures and video of the kids playing on concrete floors in the house because that's all we had. Like I even went and I got like carpet strips, and bought some carpet just to like make runners all around the house that we could at least have
Hmm.
some sort of carpet, because it was cold. It's February, and like
Yeah.
California, it's not that cold, but it's cold enough to where like if there's concrete floors, it's freezing if you have kids that
Hmm.
are crawling age, like it was brutal.
Oh man. Okay. So it's not just me. And I
Yeah.
know another friend that just like had something similar happen, but man, for it to happen when you're not home, that's and it's just like on like that water is just spraying out.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how much water can do. I actually since we're on like water damage shows, I don't know why, but this whatever it is what it is. And I'm just so you know, like everyone listening and you, Jonathan, I'm like when I'm meeting with somebody as a guest, hey, it's gonna go where it goes. We can talk about anything. I'm sure this is relevant to somebody. So we're just gonna go with it. But it was literally like a month ago we started having started seeing water again, and so it just brought everything back. I
Oh
started
yeah.
seeing water on the floor, and I'm like, whoa, and water was leaking out the garage. Oh, kind of like you. So I'm glad we got home. But it wasn't super big, and I'm like, wait, where is this water? And I was like, wait, the wall's kind of warm. And then it was in the garage, and I was like, saw like the garage wall was kind of wet, so I cut it open, and the copper pipe was like spraying out hot water. So I had to turn the hot water, and we had guests coming in, like we had a lot of our church friends coming in the next day for like a kind of like a Christmas gathering, and so like um I was like, okay, I can't call somebody this late, and it's gonna cost me an arm and a leg. I was like, I know like maybe I could figure it out. No, and this was we saw like it was like at 3 in the like maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. Um, and so I cut it up. I find the copper pipe, turn off the water. It's like, okay, it's that. Start YouTubing away. And first I put on like this like thing that you put around that dries. That's supposed to be really strong. And it was really hard because it was in the wall. Turn on the water and it's just like spraying everywhere. After I was done, I was like,
Oh
all right,
no.
now that's like hard on there. Like so, I had to figure out how to cut. I'm like learning so many things. Like, all right, how do you cut copper pipes? So I bought a little tool to like that twists around to
Hmm.
cut copper pipes. I had no idea. And then like we just didn't have water for like most of that afternoon, and like Sandra still wanted to go. Like she was upset that I think she was upset at the situation. Like I have the kids, and she didn't really know how bad the situation was, and she's taking care of all the kids in the house, and she still wants to go see like lights in Santa Clarita, like to this neighborhood that has the lights. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop everything. I haven't figured it out. We're gonna go see the lights. And I came back, and I was just like, it's 9 something. I was like, hey, everything closes at 10. I got to figure this out. People are gonna come over. I don't have hot water. Like I need a cook. And so like I just start looking at Lowe's, and I find like this thing called like not sponsored by, but Shark Bite.
Oh yeah.
I had no clue what it was, and I found I was like, oh, I think I can figure it out. So I went to got Shark Bites and stayed up to like 1 in the morning. And like the first time I tried to get them all on, it was like a crazy. If I share a picture, like just because the amount I had to cut off, it looks crazy. First time I did it, I turned it on. The water's going everywhere, like at 12 midnight. I turn it off. I was like, all right, let me try this again, put more force. And finally got it. So that's like keeping the water there. But man, water is scary. Actually, if you're a homeowner, water is
Hmm.
very scary. It's very powerful. It can ruin things very fast. Um, and yeah, just try to be aware. And so it's just, I'm like, so that actually has me thinking like, how much longer do I want to stay here in this house? I was like built in the 80s. Um, like, everything just has to be redone. Um, so yeah, it just has us thinking too, like moving or we're not like actively looking or anything, but even to hear you move to Kentucky, because we floated the idea and of like even moving like to Tulsa. But yeah, we're not like super thinking about it. But man, just thinking about like having an older house, you have to definitely be cautious and aware of like the pipes and stuff because water is powerful.
Oh yeah. Well, come to Kentucky. It's nice. It's nice. It's cold. That's the biggest thing that I've like had to adjust to is the cold. Like there's been plenty of times where I'll
Yeah,
come
like
into my
look at what
shop
you're
and
wearing.
it's
I know
still
you're in
cold.
your shop. You're in your shop though. So like you're wearing a jacket. It rained yesterday, and I mean I have the heater on a little bit, but still like I could wear,
Oh yeah.
a
It's
t-shirt.
it's like 38 right now in the shop. It's
Oh,
cold.
oh
And there's
yeah.
times where I've come in here and it's so cold where it's like down in the 20s and it's brutally cold. Like like you've doing woodwork, you've probably heard like you're not supposed to wear are you still there?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I got
good.
a call just came in.
No, you're good.
You're not supposed to wear gloves when you're doing woodworking. Like it's just like generally frowned upon because you
Uh-huh.
can like spinning tools could catch the gloves or whatever, and
Mm.
you just there's more accidents involved with gloves. And I'm like, I'm wearing gloves. It is way too cold. I mean, the gloves I wear, they're not very thick, but it's just enough to like create a barrier over my hands. And it is like even then, like it's so brutally cold. My hands feel like hard, and like I'll go in the house and like I'll touch my daughter, like, oh hey, I'm taking a break, and they're like, Daddy, your hands are so cold. I'm like, I know, it's bad.
Hey, at least you won't feel it if, like, you cut yourself or you cut off a finger or something.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't
right.
even feel
It's
that happen.
yeah, it's frozen. It doesn't even matter. Look, it's not even bleeding.
Just shattered off.
Yeah, it's too much, but that's overall, like I like Kentucky. I like where we're at. It's like I said, like we used to live in Santa Clarita, and actually you mentioned like the lights, like that Wakefield court. That's probably where you guys went to.
Yeah, we went to Wakefield. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so like I lived just around the block from there. Like we were
Oh, okay.
we were like 4 minutes away from there. So that's the neighborhood that we were in. When you said it, I'm like, oh, I miss my old neighborhood. But yeah, like that. It wasn't nearly that cold, but we didn't have like the seasons that we do. We have in
Mm,
our backyard now. We have this big old maple tree, and in the summer when we first moved in, we took a picture in front of that tree, and then in the fall we took another picture, and it's just like all these colors and everything,
yeah.
there's leaves all over the ground, and we took another picture, and then just like a few weeks ago it snowed. So then we took another picture in front of the same tree, and it's like got no leaves, but there's snow all over the place, and it's kind of cool. We're like, all right, cool. Looking forward to the spring picture. We'll have like all four seasons in front of this tree. But it's like that's not something like growing up in California, and especially like the only other places I've lived is San Diego and Hawaii. So
Oh, yeah, it's same.
yeah, it's like there's no seasons. We just got
Mhm.
great weather all year long, and it's wonderful.
It is pretty wonderful, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine I think about this often, being, 20 something, having a newborn, in 2025 and like starting like and people are doing it. There's obviously people who are like
Yeah,
20 something or younger, um, starting a family, getting married, like myself, and like need to buy a home. Like for me, people may hate me for this, but like I bought this home that we live in for like 198,000 dollars um in 2010. And I had no idea why. I didn't know like that was a good deal. I mean, to me, it sounded expensive. I wasn't making very much money. And like I didn't know it's because the market had crashed. I didn't really I just had heard about it, but I didn't know like about housing prices or anything. I was just young. I don't know. I didn't look at that stuff. But thinking about starting from scratch like that, it's tough even to rent. Like I know renting is cheaper. Um, and yeah, so I definitely feel for people who are trying to start a family here in LA. I mean, prices are easily, I mean, 700 is probably like near the lowest, 800,
oh yeah,
900. $1 million is like, you have a decent, like nice home. 800, you have like a fixer upper. Um, so we definitely are blessed that we have like 3 bedrooms here. The kids do have to share because we have 4 kids as well. But yeah, it must be difficult for people who are trying to start in LA and that are young. And I'm sure you grew up here, and it is nice to have family. So that's I think it's awesome that you have family out there to help, like with the kids and stuff. Because not having anyone, could be very difficult.
yeah. I think that's been the other biggest issue, at least for me. It's my wife's family is out here,
Hmm.
but my family is still in Santa Clarita, and like I think about them all the time. It's like my poor mom. When I told her we were gonna move, her eyes were welling up, and she was
Oh,
just all brokenhearted that we were gonna leave, and I'm gonna take my kids, and now she's she doesn't have her grandkids, like it just, it's a bummer. I think that's not a, not like a regret, but it's certainly something that when I think about it, it it messes me up.
For sure.
I'm always bummed out about that, and I think about my mom often, and just like, sorry, it's just, but hey, she's got my dad, she's still got my brother and his wife. My brother and his wife, they were trying for a couple years to have a baby, and then my sister-in-law had a miscarriage, and that kind of messed them up for a good while. And then she was able to get pregnant again, and they have a baby that's like a month older than ours.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So just for anybody
Nice.
who's not aware, like I have 4 children as well. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-month-old now.
Yeah, guys, there's
So
no TV
that's
in Kentucky, so that's why I went over there. No, just kidding. You only went there 6 months
that is
ago.
that is like the worst. Everybody would always say that.
I
They're
know,
like,
I
"Oh,
know.
do you guys not have a TV?" Or like, "Do you know how babies are made?" Yeah, yeah. I love my wife. That's how I know how babies are made. Yeah,
Same, same.
give me a break. Jeez, it's like the most silliest thing. And it's funny, like out here, like 4 kids is pretty common. Like there's a lot of people that have 4 kids.
Here
It's
in
not.
LA, not so much.
Yeah, yeah. Like, but my sister, she's got 3 kids. My brother, they're on their first, but
Right.
I imagine they'll have 3, maybe 4 kids too.
It-
So
It's
we'll
it's
see.
it's nice. I mean, we thought we were done with 2 kids for a long time. So 14, 11, 2 years, 5 months. And we thought we like, okay, we have a girl, we have a boy, we're done. And then my wife got inspired by her younger sister, like, hey, she's having a kid. I want to have a kid together. I guess that's a thing. And so I was like, sure, I love kids, like, and I think I had kind of forgotten like how difficult it is, like on your marriage. And like I talk about it in the first episode, just all the complications. I know I mainly like concentrate on like the sex part of it, but I mentioned like the relationship part. But no, I don't regret it. The fourth one was like, uh, it's funny. The kids hate it, and but it is what it is. It's like accident on purpose, accident. So like they're bookends. We have bookend accident.
Oh, I remember that actually when you guys first got pregnant. Like, or you had first mentioned it.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't seen you guys in a while, and I knew that you were dating Sandra, and just from like SFETT, like that's how
Yeah.
we first met. But do you remember Josh? He passed away in a car wreck, and we were at his funeral, and you had mentioned it. You're like, "Oh yeah, so like Sandra's pregnant, we're gonna get married." And I was like, "Oh, right on!" Like, cool, dude. Like that's wild. All right. Well, good for you though. Like,
Yeah, you're like, I'm
and
going to
then
Hawaii and gonna live it up.
yeah, I'm gonna go back to Hawaii. See you later. Like I remember like I just during that time it was like I think I was only in town for a little while, and I don't even think I came for the funeral. I just happened to like be around that time, and so I went for
Mm,
that. But that was just like, yeah, I remember when you had first mentioned it. Like, oh, cool. So it's just weird that like just the little memories that like come up. I don't even know why I would actually remember that, but when you were
that is
just
funny.
like listening to your podcast and you're like, oh yeah, we kind of had a shotgun wedding and whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember why that happened now.
You're like, that brings back memories.
Yeah.
Um, no, yeah, yeah, we thought we were done. And shotgun weddings. When we were done with college, it was funny because people were like, mainly our parents were a little surprised. Some were happier than others. But like, yeah, we were done with college and everything. I think it was mostly like the turbulence of our relationship at that time, of
Mhm.
like breaking up and getting back together. Um, and yeah, we figured out. It's been definitely a journey in our marriage, but man, it's we just keep on sticking with it, and it keeps getting better. And I'm so like back on like 4 kids. Um, I'm glad that they're gonna have more siblings to like visit with, or maybe like two siblings want to move away together. It makes it a little easier, or just holidays together. So we're looking forward to that. And the kids love the babies. They're so helpful. Like I it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It is work. And we still have young ones, so like sleeping is an issue still.
Mm.
Me and Sandra are sleeping in separate beds. This
Oh
is
no.
not because we're mad at each other, or maybe she is mad at me. That it's just sleep training has been it's so I don't know. It's been different with all the kids. So like, but second to youngest, she really needs me to sleep like next to her, and I keep going back and forth with the sleep training, and I try to pull away, but then I'm like, I get tired, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna sleep next to you, and then I fall asleep, and then I was like, I'm just gonna stay here because the baby's crying anyways with my wife. So like, I gotta find sleep somewhere. And then me and my wife end up arguing about like how we're sleep training the 6 month, and it's like sleep is a serious thing. Like, and I, I, I just look at your
Oh
reaction. You
yeah.
look like you could relate, and we're trying to figure it out. I don't know, trying not to give into the oh, it'll be fine in 6 months or it'll be fine in a year. Because I feel like if you kind of take that stance, you can get like lazy or just let your relationship kind of stay on the sides. Like, okay, I haven't slept or like, played footsie with my wife, like, and like in a while and slept in the same bed. And it's like, time goes by and it's like, oh, we were just doing that because we were trying to get by. So we try to also like, or at least, yeah, and I think both of us try to stay intentional with, all right, let's not let ourselves get too far apart just because the
Hmm.
sleeping situation is difficult. Um, but yeah, man, sleep is tough with that many kids for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's we have a king size bed, so that's great. But
Same,
like my wife nurses the baby, and she nurses in the bed. Like we used to
same.
do like the outside of the bed, and at the first everyone's telling you, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that, and then you just quickly learn like do whatever the heck works for you,
Yep, yep.
so that you can maintain some sanity while you're trying to sleep, and because you still have other kids, and if
Hmm.
you're too tired because you didn't sleep all night because you were worried about getting in and out of the bed constantly to nurse the baby and whatnot, so now you can't like sleep comfortably. Who's taking care of the rest of the kids? Like
Hmm.
you can't do it because you're just too tired. So now I gotta do it, and that means that I'm not working, and if I'm not working, we ain't eating. So
Hmm.
like I need to stay working. You need to take care of these kids so that you do whatever works for you. And um yeah, so the baby is like on her side of the bed, for part of the night. And my 3-year-old, she starts her night in her own bed, and she ends up waking up in my side of the bed. And this has been going on like for the last few months. Like she just every night she just sneaks into the bed, and and I don't mind it. She's so sweet, and like it's also like, oh, all right, my little sweetie, she just wants to like come and cuddle with
No,
daddy,
yeah,
and
for
I'm
sure.
not upset about it. Like she just comes in and hangs out, and she sleeps pretty good by herself. Like she's not all wild. Like I'm thankful my son doesn't want to try to do that, because that kid like sleep he ends up on one side of his bed, and then like in the morning he's on the other side, like all wild. I'm like, dude, how do you even do that? How
Do
are
any
you
of your
upside down
kids,
in your bed?
as I say, do any of your kids like sleep sideways? Like
Yeah,
they,
that's him.
yeah.
He's all over the
Okay.
place. I'm just like, dude, how do you do that? I'm thankful that the 3-year-old, she sleeps like me. She's just like, yeah,
Just
she's
actually
gone.
sleeps. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, that's fine. You can hang out next to me. So, and I always tell her every night when I put her to bed, I'm like, okay, you're gonna stay in your bed. She said, no, Dad, I'll pum your bed. I'm like, okay, all right, fine. You can pum Daddy's bed. That's what she
Yeah.
calls it.
Oh, that's so cute, man.
Yeah,
It's funny like how we kind of check in with them. It's like, so what's on the agenda for tonight for sleeping?
yeah.
Like I tried to convince mine. I was like, oh, you're gonna sleep with with she calls her sister. You're gonna sleep with big sister, and she like we've tried to convince her, and she loves her big sister, but and so we thought like, okay, if she's sleeping with somebody else, because it worked for the two oldest, like they kind of felt comfort with each other, so they're not like scared. And they slept in this room for a long time, and that other room was like only our extra like space room or our office for a while during like COVID times. Um, and then finally we gave them separate rooms, but then we decided to have two more kids, and it just happened to be a boy and a girl again.
Mm.
So the 2 year old, we thought, okay, she's gonna want to sleep with her older sister, but it's just not working out. Like I know her older sister wants to cuddle with her and everything and wants to make her feel comfortable, but she just needs me there.
Mhm.
And I think you're right though. Like, do whatever works. I feel like we're gonna like turn into we're gonna your wife's gonna take clips from this episode to put it onto her Instagram page, because talking about like sleep training and stuff. I think I agree that, do what works. There's gonna be a lot of people that will shit on you about like these kinds of things. And like, don't sleep, you can't sleep with them in the bed. And I know there's like reasons for it, right? You don't want to crush your baby and stuff, but do what works, and just try to keep in mind, like, still keep some kind of intimacy with, your significant other. But it's complicated and it wears on you. So, best of luck to everyone out there. There's professionals. Actually, speaking of professionals, there's like sleeping experts.
Oh
They're
yeah.
very expensive. They're very expensive from what I found.
My
Um,
sister did that. She like met with the sleep training person, and she had her first like a couple years before we had ours.
uh,
And I remember her like paying this lady, and I was like, "What the heck? What are you paying this lady for?" Like, "Oh, she's a sleeping expert, and she'll come up with like a whole sleep plan and how to train your kid and whatever." And I was like, "Don't they just sleep? Like, isn't that a?" I don't remember mom doing that. So like my brother, my sister and I are only 13 months apart, but my brother and I are 11 years apart.
oh,
So
okay. Similar to my kid.
he was the unplanned one, but I always call him like the greatest thing that ever happened to our family. Like we didn't know we needed to be a family of five until we were. It was like it was the coolest thing. Plus, it also like made me very careful because I wasn't saving myself for marriage at an early age, and I made sure like I did not have a kid. I knew what it took to raise a kid, like I was 11 years old, but we were changing diapers and helping mom out with the baby and just like doing all of the things. And I was like, nope, I know how babies are made and I ain't making one. So I was very careful to not have any kids. And I'm like, I'm not gonna. I know that I'll never get some weird knock at the door, in 10 years, like, oh hey, so you're my dad. Like, no, you ain't. No, I'm not, because I know I don't have any other kids. So I'm thankful that there was at least that. But
I'm
they're
kind of
they're they're
afraid
a
for
lot of
that.
work.
No, I know. I'm
Really?
kind
Oh
of
man, I
afraid for
hope that
that.
never happens.
For no, not for me. Not that I'm
Oh.
gonna get any knocks on the doors. No, not that. No, no, for sure not that. That's not happening. Um, no, no. The part like of so the older ones help a lot, and I think prior to having to the oldest super big on like just kids and babies in general. Like she's super like motherly. But they are a lot of work, and I think there's like as a parent, I have to be mindful of like not letting her help too much. Um, because we've had like conversations how it can be overwhelming, and it's like she feels like she has help because she is really helpful. Um, but also like I've heard of other stories of like people kind of holding it against their parents of like, hey, I'm like pretty
Mm,
much their their mother, and I helped raise them so much. So like being mindful of that, because
yeah.
she wants kids, but then it's like same thing. She sees like how much work they are, and it could like turn them off or make kind of change their perspective. And you want them to have some kind of like wake up call, but also not like deter them to the point where they're like,
Right.
I'm never having kids.
Yeah. Hopefully not. I mean, they're like I love my kids. They are such a blessing to me. And I was talking about this with my men's group. It's just that like, marriage in itself is very sanctifying. Like if you want to get closer to Christ, get married. Because it is an active and very intentional effort to be a good husband, to be a good spouse, to care for somebody else,
Mhm.
and to put them first, and to just to train yourself. When you're single, you're looking out for number one, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't, like I want to go and hang out and do whatever I want to go do and go meet my buddies and watch the game or whatever, and then realize like, oh no, like I have a wife. I can't just go and do whatever the heck I want now. Like, and not that my wife is ever like, like nagging or asking me for that I need to ask her permission to do stuff. She's always so supportive with anything. And I love that about it, but about her, but just like the whole act of being somebody's partner in life like that, it's truly a sanctifying thing. And
Mm,
learning how to forgive, learning how to be humble, and just all of the stuff that comes with it. I mean, but
I
just
do.
and then you have kids, and then it's like, oh man,
Oh.
I mean, like you kind of started both at the same time.
Hmm.
We luckily had a few months of just being married, and then it was just like, the honeymoon phase was good and long for us. And then even after we had our first, it was still good. He was such an easy baby. Like, I remember thinking, like, "God, my sister's over here paying for sleep training. This is silly. This is so easy." Yeah, my second was not that way. The second, I was like, "Hey,
Rude
so what
awakening.
what was in your sleep training manual over there? Like, can I just take a look at it? Because this second one's a mission." And I mean, I love her. We have the son, and then we had a daughter next, and she's such a great help. Like, she just loves
Hmm.
being mama's helper and cooking, and she's cracking eggs and doing all this stuff,
Oh.
and she just loves it. So, but yeah, like children, that it's such a sanctifying process, and
Hmm.
especially like for me, um, more than anything, it's learning self-control.
Yeah.
Like, I find it so easy to just like want to snap and act out in anger when, especially like my son acts crazy and like does something. And I'm like, dude, like, the heck's your problem?
Hmm.
Like, then I have to remember, oh well, you're 6 and you're a little boy filled with all kinds of energy, and yeah, like, that's your problem. And that's actually not your problem. That's just normal. And I have
Oh
the
yeah.
problem. Like, I'm
Hmm.
the one that
Hmm.
needs to learn to not act out so angrily, and like, just, it I feel like just being a dad, like, you just want to be the disciplinarian or whatever, and just, hey, stop or whatever. And then also, like, you're not doing anything really wrong. You're just
Hmm.
being a little boy. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Like, it's on me to just have a little more grace and like mercy when they do something wrong, that's like, like, that's deserving of correction. Like, oh well, maybe not. Like, maybe I don't need to be that way, and just show some mercy and grace to you. And when I do um lose it, I let them know too, like, hey, I'm sorry. And I
Mm.
think that's something that I've learned, and even on them, like, by being that example to them and letting them know that I did something wrong. Hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have got so mad, I shouldn't have yelled at you guys. Like, I I'm just a person too, and I make mistakes, and I'm a sinner, and I do my best to not be. But I'm not perfect,
Hmm.
and and then we kind of get into the gospel, and they know it. They know. And then I just, I ask them for forgiveness. And I think that that's a big part of it, is for them, I think, and just putting that on display, like, hey, dad's not perfect, dad doesn't know everything, dad isn't always going to handle every situation right, but at least he knows it,
Hmm.
and is asking for forgiveness when we make a mistake. And they do the
Yeah.
same thing. Like,
Mm.
I love seeing it when my son will do something, and then I'll scold him about something and kind of just like forget about it, and then he'll come over and be like, "Dad, I'm sorry I did that. I'll try not to do that again." And I'm like,
That's
"All
awesome.
right, it's working.
It
Good.
is.
Thank you, Lord. It's working."
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. So relationships and the closest ones will test you and really expose you in a way where it's bringing out the things that you didn't know were there, and it'll push you in such an uncomfortable place to grow. um and in the beginning, I didn't notice it, or I just, all I saw was the negative, and that's all you could see because there's like really strong emotions that, at least for me, I wasn't used to. I was just talking to another couple about like just getting upset with each other, and I mentioned how, I hope my wife's okay with this. She'll be fine. Like how prior to my wife, I don't, or at least I don't think like I ever remember being that angry. It sounds so
Mm,
bad, but um, it's I never had, I think, just a relationship like that close, and that intimate, and and probably wasn't good. We were working together and in a stressful environment. So we were like dispatchers for a transportation company, handicapped transportation company. And so like there was stress. It was like drivers we had to talk to, those customers calling, they were angry, and like we're trying to make decisions. And then she has her opinion and then I have mine. And like, I hate to admit this. Um, but like even to the point where like I remember we just got into some argument in like that room, like we were dispatching, and I just felt like so much anger and like to the point where I hate to admit this, like I wanted to slap her behind the head, like I would like another guy or something. I didn't do it. I've never hit my wife. Um, and I'm not saying anyone should, but just I say that reluctantly, just like I just didn't even know I can get that anger. I wasn't familiar with it. Maybe not
Oh
since I was a
yeah.
kid. Um, and I think when you're challenged like that, it really like if you don't like I didn't have the wisdom or someone over me to like say to kind of like what the Bible can do on its own, or just somebody that's like that has some wisdom to help point out like how you can grow from that or like what's happening.
Mhm.
So we spent like a lot of years like just arguing a lot and breaking up, and a lot of it was like just because we were like having sex, and that was like kind of um complicating our relationship. Like we kind of knew we probably shouldn't, but then like I don't know, we just it would just I don't know, it would just complicate things. I can't really remember like all the nuts and bolts of it, but I think of like that, and then like you said, the kids expose things that for me that like if I'm like replicating past things that I've learned that I wasn't too like I didn't like growing up, and then all of a sudden I find myself replicating them with my kids, and
Mhm.
then like being aware of that. I think it's super key. I think a lot of people were not aware of it, but once you are, like for me, it's super challenging. Even though I'm aware, it's just such an easy thing to fall into. And when you were talking about like yelling at your kids and stuff, or just being angry, it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, of like how easy it is to like slip on that ring and like just want that power. And it's
Yeah.
like you don't even know. Like for me, I don't even know, and I don't even think like I'm somebody who wants power and wants to like dominate over people, but it like naturally comes out. Like it just comes out of almost nowhere, and it feels like that's the right thing to do until like I see my son's reaction, or I then like pause and I'm like, man, I'm so upset and I feel like I'm right, but I'm like, it doesn't feel right. So like that power trip of being a dad, um, really like comes in fast, especially as the kids start to talk back or not want to do things that you're asking them
Yeah.
to do. Um, and then you're
Where you've
challenged
asked
with
them
like,
5 times to do.
yeah.
Yeah. It's it is one of those things where it's not like you're drunk with power, but you almost just get blinded by your own inability to see it right away, and then
Hmm.
you act out in whatever way, and then it's like, ooh, like I know there's been plenty of times where like I will have regret about that, and I don't remember what it was, but there was like this quote that I had heard, and I probably shouldn't even try to like remember it because I'll just butcher it, but um something like don't let a a moment of anger, lead you to like a lifetime of regret or something
Mm.
along that. And like I try to remember that too, like, don't I'm going to say something or do something that, especially at this age, with my kids being so young, like, not that they're going to be scarred for life. I mean, my oldest is 6. At this point, like, most of the stuff that happens, they'll probably forget these early years. But I wouldn't want them to remember, daddy being a monster because he got mad over something, and
Yeah.
I don't want my children to have a fear of me in that sense where like they don't feel safe around me
Hmm.
because I just lost my cool for something so stupid,
Yeah.
that for me at that time maybe felt like a big deal, but really was it? Like, no, no. And like it just, I don't want to feel foolish for doing something that is nothing like this. For what? Did
Hmm.
I, hey, big man, did you get your point across? Do you feel proud of yourself now? Like, no, no, I don't. I feel bad, and like, yeah, like Yeah, there's been plenty of times, and I've never hit my wife either. Like, nobody should. I don't think that getting to that point, especially like with children, like you should never discipline your children in anger. I think that's abuse. You
Mm,
know, disciplining with a calm and rational tone, like people can say however they feel about disciplining their children. That's on
yeah.
you. Again, like you as a parent, you make those decisions, but I don't believe that like disciplining in anger, that's where
Mhm.
you start to tiptoe on abuse, because now if you're not in control, you're just losing it. And that is abuse. And like I know, like growing up, like I'm not trying to put my dad on blast, but there's been plenty of times where I certainly tested my dad, and by my standards I might call it abuse, but at the same time, like it was a different era,
Yeah,
like
it's true.
and the way my dad grew up, like my
Mhm.
grandfather was a mean old man, and like he was quick to pull that belt off, and like I got it, as a kid,
Oh, wow.
my
Yeah.
grandfather whipped my butt more than once, and my cousins, and like that's the way my dad grew up, so that was his, that's what he had as an example, and
Mhm.
like you said, like until you're aware of it, you're not trying to repeat those same mistakes. Like, okay, well, it stops here with me, and
Yeah.
that's where like, I'm trying to teach my kids, and I tell them the same thing. Like, look, like I don't get any joy in disciplining you or like taking away your screen time. Like that doesn't make me happy. That
Mm.
that actually makes me sad, because I love watching you, like play a game and unlock a new character, and just watching you play. I can enjoy that. Speaking of my kid, he just like walked
No,
in.
you're good. You're good.
um, but like that's like I don't find joy in that, and just reminding them that like this doesn't make us happy,
Yeah.
and I think that they, and he's starting to get that. Like what my daughter, she's kind of a liar.
Kind of a liar.
Yeah, and she'll lie about the silliest things. And um we bought her a ring for her fifth birthday. It's this little gold ring. It's nothing really
Um,
fancy. It's not even real, but to her it's so special. And she was, like she would lie about something, and instead of like disciplining her with on her bottom or something, like we decided we're gonna take away her ring.
mhm.
And oh, that hurts. That
Right.
hurts so bad, and it's great, it's
Yeah,
great
yeah.
for us because it's like, good, we found something that's gonna like
Mhm.
hopefully correct this behavior. And she'll lie about the dumbest things, and it's just like, okay, well, give me your ring. And she starts bawling her eyes out, and she gives it up all reluctantly, and she's so sad. But it's like, okay, you lose your ring for the day. Can't lie
Yeah.
to us, and we just try to, remind her that like, hey, like the reason you can't lie, it's not because lying is bad, because lying is bad, but
Yeah.
what it is that we can't trust you.
Yep, yep.
and
Mhm.
and we need to be able to depend on you to trust you. Like we don't lie to you
Mhm.
guys, like like this might be controversial, we don't do Santa Claus, like
Mhm.
for that same reason. Like
Oh, that's interesting.
we didn't want to like lie to our kids that
Yeah.
Santa Claus is bringing these gifts, and if you don't behave, you don't get gifts or whatever.
Uh-huh,
Like that's
uh-huh.
just, for us, that's just not true. So like, hey, you guys do whatever you want,
You're
again,
gonna get
hey,
some
you're the
messages in
parent.
your DMs.
Yeah, but like you do your own thing. But that was something um that we had talked about kind of early on, and was like, yeah, we're not gonna do that. Like
That's cool.
that's, for us, that's lying to our kids.
Yeah.
And we're not going to lie to them, and we don't want
Uh-huh.
them to lie to us. And we've told them that, like, look, like there's other parents that do that, and that's okay. And we've told them the same thing, like, hey, if somebody wants to believe in Santa Claus, that's okay, and I don't want you guys like going and ruining their thing. Santa Claus isn't real. Like that's rude. So now you're being disrespectful by doing that.
Yeah.
Like every
Yeah.
family can do their own thing. And
Mm.
we don't like tell them that they're, we want to encourage, respectful um just behaviors of other people's beliefs. Like, hey, that's fine.
Mm.
They'll figure it out whenever they do it. My
Mm.
sister and her husband, they do it, and they're believers, and they do it, and they do the elf on the shelf thing, like, hey, that's fine. Like it's a fun thing. We still celebrate Christmas and do like all the fun stuff, but that's just one that we just don't do for whatever reason. And well, because it's a lie, and we don't want to be lying to our kids. So that's what you gotta tell them. Like, hey, we don't lie to you. You don't lie to us. And like, I tell my kid, like my son, like, hey, if you ask me something, I'm gonna give you the truth. I may not tell you all the things that there might be some parts that you don't need to know, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you them eventually. Like he's never asked me like how babies are made, but he did ask like, okay, well, how does the baby get out of mama's belly? And my sister, like my wife and I were both looking at each other like, what's the answer here? Like what do we say? And we just kind of told them like, oh well, the baby comes out of mom's vagina. And it was
You're
like,
like, well,
oh
that's over with.
yeah, like we just like came out and said it, and then he started asking a little bit like, no, we're not going to talk any more about it. That's enough. We'll talk more about it when you need to learn more about it, but right now that's enough. And he was just like, okay, fine.
That's funny. I've heard only answer as much as they ask, but that didn't really
Yeah,
work out in that situation.
yeah. Well, I mean, he asked, like, but how does it come out? Like, does somebody cut open the belly or what? Like,
You just said yes. Some people like yes. That's
sometimes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sometimes that
Yeah,
happens.
although like we've never had, none of our kids have had it.
A
We're born
C-section.
through
Oh, okay.
C-section, so it's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, it's unlikely that that's going to happen. There's certainly the possibility, but it's whatever. Anyway, it was one of those like, she's looking at me, I'm looking at her. We're both like, how do we answer this one? I don't know. All right, I'm just going to quickly blurt it out and get this one over with. It's kind of like the ripping
So
off the
guys,
band-aid type of moment.
to be careful because if you want to go to the extent of not telling your kids about Santa Claus, they will just ask, where do babies come out when they come out of their
Yeah.
stomach? And you're gonna have to tell them because if you didn't lie about Santa Claus, you got to tell them where their babies
Yeah.
come.
Hey, I mean, it's a
That's
slippery
awesome
slope,
though.
right? Like, what lies do you consider acceptable, and what lies do you not? And
Yeah,
and I think at their age, I think as like for us, we can understand what like a little white lie is, right?
yeah, yeah. Like
And
surprise birthday party or something.
right,
Yeah,
and that's something
yeah,
we've told them too. Like, hey, like if we're keeping a secret, and I've told them this too, like, Mama and I don't have secrets with each other,
yeah.
but
That's awesome.
we might keep a surprise. If we're going to surprise mama with something, then we'll be quiet about it, and we'll keep this as a surprise, but it's not a
Mm,
secret. And if because I just don't want them to see that type of like behavior, that we're keeping secrets from mom. Like, well, if dad's keeping a secret from mom, like, why can't I keep a secret from mom?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
just trying to give them good things to model. And it's such a like a tricky landscape to navigate through, just being a parent and all the little stuff. I mean, it, but it's cool and terrifying.
For sure. Like, and so like the two things you touched on, like we've talked on, and I think it's so great that you brought up lying because I'm kind of loving that topic right now. But like of having the power of like discipline and like your anger and like lying, these are things, especially as like I find as a parent, and we have a child that uh, they're a little touchy with somebody, but we have a liar as well.
Hmm.
And if they hear it, they'll know it. I'll respect their privacy. But um, what has helped, actually, let me go back to my point. So, like, a couple of things. One, it's like such a piece of fruit. Like, if I'm kind of, I'll take as biblical a little bit because that's what's kind of coming up in my head. And like recent understandings of like Genesis and like Adam and Eve story of like that fruit though is just so like that forbidden fruit there of like anger and lying in those situations are almost to the extent that like you're if you're not aware and it doesn't feel like we're aware there's another choice like it's just so easy to take, right, and to like just be angry and feel like self-righteous and prideful and like I need to be angry because I need to correct my children and or I need to lie here because it's like the right thing to do, and without having another perspective of like, well, no, there's other options. And so I think oftentimes we don't know, especially if you're not familiar with just things that I could say the Bible, but I also just want to say like other wiser ways to live, or there's somebody that has taught you a better way. Um, right. It's like you're not aware. And even if sometimes you are aware, because I'm aware we're not supposed to be angry, it's just it comes so second nature. But it's a very
Hmm.
easy fruit to just take in you don't even know it's happening until like you're regretting it. And then yeah, you have to like ask your kids to forgive you. But like the thing with with punishment, I found I try, I'm not perfect at it. And I tell my wife, like, don't get mad, like make them mad. Like, so like when they do something wrong, like I tell my kid, well, I'm not gonna get upset about it. You just can't have your device, you know? And then he love like my son loves watching. He loves like watching his shows. He's into anime and like he has like shows lined up. Like my two, like they've all gotten to timeout. I'm like, it's fine. Like I would give you warnings. We just have to go do timeout. I try to do it as calmly as I can because like you're right. I want to do it in anger, and I try to like and majority of my kids have freaked out when they get timeout. Like they act like they're getting beaten. They're not though. I'm like just putting them in the corner, and I stay like I try to stay there with them, because or else they won't stay in the corner. And I'll do it like the whole like how many ever minutes they are, how many ever years they are. Then that's how many minutes I give them timeout.
Okay.
And I'm the timeout like person, so I'm always giving I feel like I give most of the discipline in the house. My wife seems to be okay with it. And it's usually timeout when they're like before the age of like 5 or so. And it works. Like I'll just try to do as calm as I can, give warnings. And it's like, all right, you don't want to listen, then we got to go to timeout. Or you don't want to listen, you're going to lose your device. And I do my best to give warnings. I feel like that helps. But I think sometimes um, what I noticed, and this is not like passing judgment or anything, it's difficult sometimes to discipline your children when you have the fear or you have like that you're taking something away from them and they're gonna be sad about it. Like I gotta make my kid like I don't want my kid to like not watch or I don't want them to miss that birthday party because then like I have to feel guilty about them missing out on something. And I think that's like probably some of the challenges I hear other parents and even myself sometimes. I like, do I really want to take away this trip from my daughter that she's been waiting on to go to with her friends? You know, and but she
Mhm.
really did do something that's terrible, like and then she needs to know the consequences. But I have to be the one who's going to take it away, right? And kind of make sure that she learns from it. It's hard to balance it, but for myself, and I notice other parents, like that's kind of the tricky thing is like being the person who has to kind of be the bad guy. And it seems like the
Yeah.
bad guy. It seems like you're being the bad guy in the moment, but it does pay dividends. Kids do respond to it. They need structure. They need to kind of know where it's okay, where it's not. Um, and like, is lying okay? It's not. And lying is a tough one though, because from what I understand, that when it comes to lying, sometimes the compulsive liars, from what I've heard, like scientifically, is that their brains work faster, like in the area of them coming up with like a story that's not true. That like that happens faster for them than actually like sitting on it and like thinking about whether they're gonna tell the truth.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not giving your kid an out, but yeah, that's the
No.
other thing.
So, so I've heard that too, and like I know, like not to say that I'm a liar, but like I've had those same situations where like you can just like I think I don't know if it's just like my sinful nature, but like yeah, like the first thing that might come up might just be a lie, and that just might be the
Mm,
way my brain comes out. But I have to like be conscious of it, you know.
sure.
I'm like, hey, like no, that's not true. Like,
Hmm.
you know, I like almost have to like mentally reset myself. And what I've found that has worked really well is like setting the expectation early on.
Yeah.
Like if it's something like, hey, I'm gonna ask you a question and I need to
Mm,
know the truth in this, you know,
mm.
like and if I find out that you're lying to me, this will be the consequence. So instead of
I'm
just
actually writing this down. Yeah,
um
because you gave me that idea of like
yeah.
line training and like set the expectation. I think those are great, and I'm gonna remind myself with my kids of like even like I think it would maybe even be good to like even um like role play. It's like, okay, so like I'm gonna ask you this thing or whatever, just to kind of give them the practice of it. And so your mind might come up with like some story that's not true, and for whatever reason, you're not going to want to tell the truth. And kind of so I think that's so important though, like what you're saying, so help them be aware. Because if you kind of like preface it right, you're giving them time to think. You're like, all right,
Mhm.
I have time to think here. Um, Yeah, I think I'm going to do that with the child that is left unnamed.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for sure. And like with my daughter, that's like she's only 5, so her name is Grace, and she gets a lot of grace in this. So like there's that, but it's that I've noticed has been what's helpful. And then I also just let her know, like, look, like the punishment for lying, you already know what it is.
Mhm,
Like, I'm gonna take away your ring if you lie. The
mhm.
punishment for what you might like, the reason you might be lying, like, hey, who ate this cookie on the counter? Like before dinner, like these cookies were sitting there, they're fresh baked cookies. I get it, the temptation to eat them. They smell
Yeah.
great. Yeah, like, but you weren't supposed to eat cookies before dinner. We were gonna
Mhm,
eat them after dinner,
mhm.
like, but the consequence for lying about that is going to be worse than you just telling me the truth. Just put it right there, kiddo. But the consequence for that could be almost nothing.
Yeah.
Like I might just be asking the question because I just wanted to know who did it. Not because I'm out here to like give timeouts or to be a disciplinarian. I'm just like, oh man, which one of you guys did this? You guys, like
You're gonna get it.
it might be nothing,
Yeah.
but or just like, okay, well then I guess you don't get to have the cookie after dinner like the rest of us will. And now
Mhm.
like when we're all sitting around the table having our cookies and milk, you're just gonna sit there by yourself and not have cookies and milk. Like that's punishment enough already,
Yeah.
like I don't need to do anything else. You already ate the one that you would have ate, so done deal, like so that's what I try to remind her of, that like, look, the punishment for lying is worse than that is most likely going to be worse than the punishment of what you did that you're lying actually about.
Mhm.
And there's no reason for it. Um
How are
yeah.
you doing on time, by the way? Or do you need to go?
um I don't need, no, I'm fine actually.
Okay, okay. Well,
As do you hear my screaming baby in the background?
I don't. So
Oh,
your
that's good.
microphone's better than probably than mine. Maybe we'll hear it.
Yeah.
We'll check it out on post, but it's fine. Actually, thinking me, I have time. I have like 10 more minutes. Dang it. I thought we had
Oh man,
longer,
it's
but
been for like an hour and a half we've been on this call here.
no, but I think it's good. I think we kind of like naturally, organically even got to a topic that we didn't even necessarily like even talk about before. So I'm kind of glad I let it kind of just naturally flow. Um, but staying on this thing of lying, it's funny. I try to stay neutral, but everyone's gonna know who it is, and it's just funny. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't matter, and I think that's the other part, is that like even with my kids, like they all know each other's own problems,
yeah,
like, oh, Gracie is the liar and Joel's the kid who has no self-control, and Val's the one who throws tantrums if she gets upset or doesn't get her way. She just like loses her mind and turns into like a little devil, and you're like, oh my gosh, you are so crazy. um
you
yeah,
know,
like it's
you bring up
just
a topic that I'm gonna I heard recently, and let me know what you think about this, because I think kind of we need to hold some tension, right? And with um like yeah, like saying those things about our kids, but it's not like, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but like speaking that over them, like it's like their personality and it's like a trait that they are not, huh? That like they're not going. I'm sorry, I just like thinking in my head as I'm talking, like that they're not going to be able to like shake off or that like they identify with, and this is just me.
mm,
I think there's something to that, and also like, well, being self-aware is helpful too, of like kind of not being so prideful that I'm just like this, I don't know, like person that's like perfect. Um, I don't know. That's so kind of just see like two things. I don't know. Does that
no.
make sense what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you. Like, I know somebody who um like calls their daughter like, oh, she's such a little brat.
Mhm,
And like I think about that and I'm like, well, she's a little brat, and how many times has she heard you say that about her?
mhm,
Or like, like you're speaking that into her. And the same thing like with my kids, like I try to remind them like, oh yeah, like we all have these same issues though. Like, okay, like they know that Grace loses her ring if she lies, but
yeah.
also Joel, you've lied to me. We
Mm,
all do these things, like nobody, and I'll remind them, all have sinned. We are
mhm,
all just as bad. And we've tried to, like, my wife and I, we've always tried to treat them not as if we're like, yes, obviously we're their parents and we are above them, but also they're people. So we respect them the way, we talk to them in the respect that we would talk to anybody. We
Yeah.
treat them like they're little adults, because sooner than later they're going to be. And if we don't treat them the way we want to be treated, they're gonna just they're gonna like model that behavior. If we treat them
Mm.
where we're belittling them or make them feel like they're subhumans, like we're their boss and they have to do everything we say just because we're the parents. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, yes, you do, but also
There's a
like
way of doing it though with
there's a
like
way
grace and
of doing
mercy.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having
Mhm.
respect for them, like
Yeah.
treat them like they're people, because they are people and they're so
Yeah.
capable of learning new things. Like my son, I was teaching him like how to just do like graphic design and like just drawing simple like squares and circles on the computer that we can cut out on the CNC machine. But
Nice.
just like teaching him like, yeah, this is how you do it. And like he's sitting there getting these concepts and understanding how to use a mouse. And it's like, yeah, they're so capable,
Mhm.
and they're very capable of learning terrible behavior,
Yeah.
especially if they're around me and I'm being terrible all the time. So it's like that's the same thing. Like, hey, yeah, we are all this bad. Like, don't sit there and think that you're so much better because, oh, Gracie lost her ring for lying. Dude,
Yeah.
you're just as bad. Do you remember that time when you were lying about this? Oh yeah. Like, do you see? You're just
Mhm.
as guilty. We are all just as guilty. I am just as guilty and you are too. So, I also, like, even at bedtime, I try to like speak words of affirmation to them, like, I tell the
That's
girls, hey,
good.
I'm smart,
That's so
I'm
important.
kind, I'm funny,
Yes.
just teaching them all these things. It's like, these are the things that you are. We're not going to dwell on the things that you also are that are negative, because we're all that way. And if I sit
Mhm.
there and harp on the small things that they do every now and then, like, yeah, you might lie once a week for something stupid, but you're also so kind all the week. You're so
Yeah. Yeah.
thoughtful all week long. Like, like it's I love seeing it. Like, Joel will get hurt playing, and Grace will run to the freezer and grab like a little ice pack out of the freezer drawer, and get him a glass of water just to help him calm down,
Oh,
because he'll get like kind of
that's
hysterical
so
when he starts
awesome.
to lose it. And she
Yeah.
just like starts to come in and care on him. Like, do you see how thoughtful you are? You're so kind. You're thinking of these things. Like, we're not gonna dwell on the fact that you lied about something dumb,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
that's nothing. Who cares about
Yeah.
that? Like, if God sat there and made us feel like we're so terrible for every little thing that we did wrong, like, you're gonna always think you're just bad.
I mean,
If you're just constantly getting disciplined, you're gonna think you're bad all the time. And I don't want my kids to feel like that. I want them to remember that, like, hey, it's my job to discipline you because I'm trying to raise you in the ways that the Bible tells me to raise you in.
mhm.
But also, like, you're not bad. You're a good
Yeah.
kid. And I remind him all the time, like, hey, you're getting in trouble, but you're not bad. You're a good kid, and we all make mistakes. And I think just
Mhm.
reminding them of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to go along with like what you're saying, like I know the Bible also like it has like things that convict us and talks about what we're not supposed to do, but I think also like there's a lot of loving language in there and like forgiveness and grace and how like God blesses everybody, right? Whether they're believer or not, like everybody's going to get rain for their crops. It doesn't just rain on the believer, and God
Right.
doesn't really see that. So and so I think also giving that like free grace to our children is important. And like I don't know if like this kind of points out that I don't do it enough, and I probably don't. I don't tell my kids about like what they're doing well enough because I know when I tell my son, and it took me some time to realize it because I was taking it for granted that like my son, he's so good with our 2 year old who's like the most rambunctious one of them all. And so like say I'm trying to cook and my wife's with the baby and she just needs somebody to play with her or just to take care of her. That's what we say. Can you just watch her? And so to him, um, actually, when we don't even ask him, he's just playing with her and he's just playing with her and like doing really well. When I mentioned to him, like, hey, Matt, like sometimes we only say the negative things about him. And regretfully say that. And it just, it does take, unfortunately, it doesn't come naturally enough. do that, to speak words of affirmation. So I'm glad you're saying that reminder, and I feel like I'm glad I have people around me that lately to remind me to do that, because I just don't do it enough. Because we can just, like, whether it's out of like making jokes or feeling putting somebody down, because that just makes us feel great, like we're powerful, we just don't do it. So when I told my son, like, hey, he was so surprised, like, hey, like, I know you don't see it this way, but you're really great with Gabby and you play with her and she's having fun. I know you don't see it as like taking care of her and watching her, but it's so helpful to us. It's so helpful that you're able to do it in this way where she just is having fun and you're not just telling her what to do, not to do. You're playing hide and seek. You're like, just because he likes to have fun with her. And so when I pointed that out to him, he's like, whoa, like, he was surprised. Like, I'm a good son. Like, I'm doing something good. And just because I'm having fun doing it, it doesn't mean I'm not being helpful or productive.
Right.
You know, he didn't really see it that way. And I think pointing that out kind of empowered him a little bit to like do it more, or to see it in that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes our kids are better with our little ones than we are, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because we're just spent, and sleep is sparing. And um, I feel guilty sometimes. They're better with the young ones than we are sometimes.
One thing that just, and you might want to try this too, is my wife and I had come across a video or something. I don't remember what it was, but um, this this lady said that what she does is she'll often talk about her children
Mm,
positively within earshot of the child she's
there you
talking
go.
to.
Yeah.
So instead of hearing it, firsthand, they're kind of overhearing you talk well of them, which also makes them, like that's
Mm,
more of a
love that.
confidence booster
Yeah.
to hear somebody talking good of you when you don't think that they're listening to you. So I mean, in a way, I think that could be a little manipulative, but I think it's in a positive way of like, hey, I want to build you up, but I don't, I also want you to know, like, I am talking good about you. And I've
Yeah.
told my son that, like, I love talking about you. I love telling people like things that you're doing, and you're learning how to read, and that you picked it up so quick. And like he's sitting there with this Rubik's cube and just blasting it out. And I'm like, dude, how did you do that? I have no idea. Like how did I'm not I don't have that kind of smarts. I don't know. Can you do a Rubik's cube?
Only because of YouTube.
Oh yeah, see, so like that's it. But like he'd never watched the YouTube video, and all of a sudden he started doing it, and I'm like, wow,
That's amazing.
that's super cool. Like, so
That
I'm
is
like
super cool.
bragging on him. He hasn't got it completely done. He's got like the one
Oh, but
side he can
still.
do. But yeah, but just being able to do it, and now he's like practicing it. And he's only had it for like a couple weeks, and he's just like blasting it out. I'm like, dude, the first week he was already getting one color, like no problem.
Mhm.
Pick a color,
Sweet.
dad. I can do any color you want. And I was like, all right. So I'm sitting there trying to make it all hard, and then I'll look at him, and he'll look at it, and it's like, so what color would be the hardest? And you're like, oh, probably orange right now. And I'm like, how do you even know? Like, how can you look at it and know that that would be the hard one to do? Which is super
No,
impressive to me.
no, their
But
brains are amazing. I mean,
they
the fact
are.
that they're it's just so like geared to learn things like language and like really difficult things like that, because their brain plasticity, like just the way God made them, is like we don't think that of them often enough, but they are just so like paying attention to things that we just can't anymore because our brains are different. And
Oh yeah.
that's so awesome that you do that. I wrote that down. I don't know if it's being manipulative, um, because I think you're doing two good things at once. You're challenging yourself to say good things, right? Because
Hmm.
I believe, like in Proverbs again, like last episode, there's power in our tongue. There's life,
Yeah.
like life-giving power in our tongue. And hearing that throughout my life, I didn't think much of it, but the more and more, like I just noticed the power of words. Like there's just something really very powerful that comes from the things that we say about people. And I think challenging ourselves, even if it feels like you force, sometimes honestly, some of the loving things I have to do for my kids, sometimes it doesn't feel so natural, but I know, even if my mind is telling me like, oh, it's awkward or it's weird, or why are you hugging your kid, or like kissing your kid or saying that good thing because they also are bad. Like, I think it's a good thing to force myself to do positive, loving things for my kids, even if it doesn't feel natural. It's making me better, and it's also going to make them better at like checking that I'm saying positive things about them. So I think that's a great point you bring up. Um, dude, I have to go pick up. I have to go like a whole like schedule of like pickups right now. Usually it's the other person who has to go, But I appreciate you like giving me so much time. I love where we got to, um, and where we ended up, just like talking these things about our kids, because yeah, there's just wonderful things to think about. I wrote things down. I think this is awesome. I don't know, anything last thing you want to mention? And I do want to make another plug. I know you've had it there. Your Madrigal Made. Um, what's the easiest? Actually, let's do that. What's the easiest way for people to find your business and like things you do?
Definitely, my Instagram. It's Madrigal Made, my last name. If you want to put it up there,
It's right.
that's going to be
It's
the
right there in your
easiest way.
water bottle behind you. Actually,
Oh
you
yeah,
did it
yeah,
on purpose.
it's there too.
Mhm.
That's my logo. My dad actually drew the M with the
Oh,
wood
nice.
boards on there. So he helped me come up with that logo and do that. So that's kind of a fun thing. But yeah, that's the easiest way to get connected to me is through my Instagram. My Etsy shop is also linked there if you're looking for home organization products. I make boxes to put Ziploc bags into, foil, dryer sheets. I have a box or a little wooden block that's designed to hold batteries of all things. Like
I
I
just
needed
ordered
a
that
better
one.
way to I
Yeah.
needed a better way to put batteries in my house. So I made myself one and then, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of like right in that thing. I should just offer this in the Etsy store." And it's like one of my best sellers. It's kind of cool. I love it. And it's a unique design that nobody else is doing. And I think that's what makes my products, at least for the home organization stuff, is that nobody's doing it the way I do. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're certainly unique and they're cool. I like them. Most people like them. So yeah,
No, they're awesome. I think the battery thing for sure. I just have like a drawer with loose batteries everywhere and like
yeah,
Costco boxes of them. So that's gonna be helpful. And like kids just know to go and grab what they need. I ordered that
yeah.
one, and I actually ordered the bag one for my mom. We don't use really Ziploc bags anymore, but when I go to her house and we're taking things, it's just like a mess. I'm like, yeah, hopefully she's
Oh
not
yeah.
offended by that, but I bought it for, but I bought something for her, so it's kind of a weird gift, but
Hey, I
it's
and
gonna.
she'll appreciate it. I'm
I
sure.
hope so. I hope
I've
so.
never. It's like my go-to like wedding gift. We just went to a wedding last week, and that's
There
what
you go.
I gave as the wedding gift. And they were like, "Oh, this is so great. We love it." And I'm like, "Yeah." And wait till you have kids, and you're putting snacks into bags or whatever all the time. So, yeah.
Well, Jonathan, thanks for your time. I want to say you gave me an hour and 45 minutes. But I just love like how like your story of how like far you've come, like how you're still a fairly new father, but dude, you come with like so much experience. So I know your kids are gonna appreciate it, like as they get older, like everything that you have to share for them, and the fact that you're vulnerable and willing to talk about those things is going to be such a benefit to them because they're gonna, life's not perfect, and for our kids, and so the way we can
Yeah.
kind of be honest about things that we've gone through, and that they know they have somebody who's going to be honest to them, um,
Yes.
is just huge. So just again, thank you for your time, everybody. Go buy up all of his stuff, and if you come up with an idea, let him know. And he does custom stuff. You'll see his channel. It's super satisfying. He has all the machines to do probably whatever you need. So
Yeah.
go ahead and check him out. It's super satisfying, even just to watch him make things. And yeah, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and hope we get to chat some more. It's been good talking to you, and just like we chatted last week a little bit too, and it was just like, oh man, we'd spend way too much time that neither of us have because we're both way too busy. So
Definitely.
have a good one, man. Thanks.
You too. Well, hopefully it's not doesn't have to be the last time you come on. So we'll see about another one.
All
All right,
righty.
everyone. Well, thanks for staying on. If you stayed on this long, until next time. Peace, everyone.